Welcome back. We're picking up where we left off. Today we are examining the conclusion of the book of Job.
And it is a massive conclusion to tackle.
It really is. We have a very clear path for this deep dive today. First, we will examine the first whirlwind speech. So this section covers the inanimate cosmos and the weather.
Right, the foundations of the physical world.
Exactly. Next, we will look at the second part of that same speech, which catalogs the wild animals. Then we move to the second whirlwind speech. Here we will analyze the figures of Behemoth and Leviathan.
Which is always a fascinating topic.
Oh, absolutely. And after that, we will dissect Job's final response. We will also examine the prose epilogue that closes the book. And then finally, we will close with a Latter-day Saint devotional reflection.
That outline gives us a really solid structure because
Yeah.
we are dealing with a text that shifts entirely in its register here.
Yeah, completely.
We move from a drawn-out human dispute to this sudden, overwhelming divine address. The transition is abrupt. It requires careful attention from the reader.
I completely agree. But I think we need to set the scene before we analyze the theology. Let us look at the narrative and historical moment first.
Good idea.
So, Job has finished speaking. The long, grueling dialogue with his three friends is just over. Chapter 31 closed with the narrator stating a simple fact. The words of Job are ended.
Right. He is done.
He is. Job has sworn his final oath of clearance. He has signed his name to his legal defense. He is waiting for the indictment from his adversary.
And the silence following Job's oath should be profound. I mean, he has challenged the heavens. He expects a response right then and there.
But he doesn't get one immediately, does he?
No, he doesn't. The text introduces a delay. A new character appears. Elihu steps into the narrative.
Right, the younger guy.
Yeah, he's a younger man. He is angry with Job for justifying himself rather than God. And he is angry with the friends for failing to refute Job.
And Elihu proceeds to fill 6 entire chapters with his own arguments. I mean, he speaks at length, yet nobody else in the text acknowledges him.
Exactly. Job does not reply. The three friends remain silent.
It's like he's talking to a wall.
It is. And when God finally speaks, God completely ignores Elihu too.
Which is just wild to me. This creates a really strange narrative vacuum. Elihu speaks into a void.
Yeah, and many scholars view his speeches as a later editorial addition because of that. They suggest a later writer felt the friends did not defend God adequately.
That makes sense. But regardless of their textual origin, these chapters do serve a narrative function. They delay the climax.
They absolutely build the tension. You have Job sitting in the ashes. He listens to this younger man lecture him. He just waits.
And Job has demanded a hearing since chapter 9. He has asked for an arbiter. He wanted someone to place a hand on both him and God.
A mediator, essentially.
Right. He wanted a formal writ of indictment. He wanted to take God to court. And now the entity he demanded finally arrives.
But the arrival is not a quiet courtroom entrance. The Lord answers Job out of the whirlwind. A theophany begins.
And a theophany is a visible manifestation of a deity, right?
Exactly. The storm gathers in the text. The weather physically changes. The human courtroom Job spent so much energy trying to construct simply dissolves.
A divine interrogation replaces it.
Yes. So we need to pivot to the analytical questions here. We need to look at the shape of God's answer. It is genuinely unlike anything else in the book.
It really is. I mean, God does not answer Job's legal case. There is no verdict handed down.
None at all.
There is no ruling on Job's specific charges of injustice.
And we must also remember the dramatic irony at play here. Job never learns about the heavenly wager.
That is such a key point.
It is. You, as the reader, know about the events of chapters 1 and 2. You know about the dialogue between Yahweh and the Satan.
But Job remains entirely ignorant of that prologue.
Completely in the dark. He never finds out his suffering was a test.
So instead of a verdict, God delivers this barrage of rhetorical questions. And these questions cover the entire natural world.
They do.
We must state our framing point clearly right now for everyone listening. God does not answer why Job suffered.
He just does it. And this is a radical reorientation of the entire debate.
Because the book has operated on a specific framework since chapter 3, hasn't it?
Yes. Job and his friends all assumed that human moral categories govern the world. They assumed a strict retributive system.
Meaning the righteous prosper and the wicked suffer.
Exactly. The whirlwind speeches step outside that framework entirely. They refuse the premise of the debate.
They do not validate the friends' theology, and they do not validate Job's legal demands either.
Right. Let us examine that first whirlwind speech. It begins with the inanimate cosmos. God's opening words set a completely new tone. Who is this that darkeneth counsel by words without knowledge?
Quite an entrance. God commands Job to gird up his loins like a man. God says he will demand answers from Job. This is a very aggressive posture.
It is a direct callback to Job's own courtroom terminology. Job wanted a legal proceeding. Well, he gets one. But the roles are inverted.
Job thought he would be the prosecutor.
Yeah, but God assumes the role of the interrogator. Job is now on the witness stand.
And the questions begin with the foundations of the earth. God asks Job where he was at creation. The text asks Job to declare if he has understanding.
It establishes a fundamental asymmetry immediately. God is the architect. Job is a late arrival.
That brings us to a really crucial detail in verse 38:7. It mentions the morning stars singing together. It mentions the sons of God shouting for joy,
Yes, the Hebrew phrase here is Bene Elohim.
which connects directly back to the divine council we saw in chapter 1. The Bene Elohim presented themselves before Yahweh, and the Satan was among them.
That's right. And we will return to this verse in the devotional closing. It holds specific weight for Latter-day Saint theology.
I'm looking forward to that.
But historically, it places the creation of the earth within the context of a divine assembly. Job was not part of that assembly. He was not present when the foundation stones were laid.
So he lacks the standing to even critique the architect.
Yeah.
The speech then moves forcefully through the natural world. God discusses setting bounds for the sea. And the sea is often a symbol of chaos in ancient Near Eastern literature, right?
Very much so. It represents the untamed destructive forces.
So God says, "Hitherto shalt thou come, but no further." He commands the dawn. He tells the morning to shake the wicked from the earth.
And the questions just continue relentlessly. God asks about the springs of the sea. He asks about the gates of death,
He asks Job to locate the dwelling places of light and darkness.
which are the fundamental mechanisms of the ancient cosmos.
Then there's this part where the text describes rain falling on land where no human lives. It satisfies ground where no man is. It causes grass to spring up in the unseen wilderness.
I love that passage. This is a quiet detail amid the thunder, but it does really heavy theological work.
How so?
Well, William Brown writes extensively on wisdom literature and creation theology. He analyzes this specific image.
Brown argues this decenters the human being, doesn't he? The natural world does not exist primarily for human reward or punishment.
Yeah. Exactly. Think about the implications of that for a moment. If the universe operates on strict retributive justice, like the Friends argued, then rain should only fall in the fields of the righteous.
And drought should only strike the wicked.
Right. The Friends argued for a domesticated theology. They believed God's primary job was managing human morality.
But God points to the rain in the desolate wilderness. No human is there to see it. No human is there to benefit from the grass.
The cosmos has its own order. It operates whether humans interpret it or not. God sustains a world that has nothing to do with us.
That is so humbling. The speech catalogs the constellations next. It mentions the Pleiades, Orion, and the Bear. God asks us if Job can bind the chains of the Pleiades.
Can Job guide the bear with her cubs?
And the accumulation of questions really builds the case here. No single question is meant to be a devastating intellectual blow, is it? The sheer breadth of Job's ignorance makes the point.
It does. And Carol Newsom offers a highly influential reading of this section. She resists flattening the speech into mere divine power.
Because it is easy to read this as God simply bullying Job into submission, right? It can sound like God is just shouting Job down through sheer volume.
Yeah, it can. But Newsom argues it is an invitation instead. God invites Job to see differently. Job must decenter his own suffering as the sole lens for understanding the cosmos.
Because Job has spent chapters staring at his own sores. He has stared at his ash heap. His pain has become his entire universe.
And God forces him to look up. God forces him to look at the stars, the sea, and the weather patterns.
But I have to ask a direct question about scale here. Does sheer scale actually address personal pain? You have a man sitting in ashes. He's covered in physical sores. He is mourning 10 dead children.
It's a horrific situation.
Right. So does this overwhelming catalog of cosmic indifference risk sounding dismissive? If you are grieving, does it really help to hear about the Pleiades or the rain in an uninhabited desert?
That is the central tension of the Whirlwind speeches. The text asks you to consider a very difficult premise. Does expanding your perspective diminish your pain, or does it simply contextualize it?
It definitely doesn't feel like an apology.
No, the speech certainly does not apologize for Job's suffering.
It does not validate his demand for localized justice either.
No. It demands he look at a system so vast that human morality cannot possibly be its organizing principle. It is a harsh comfort.
Some might argue it is not comfort at all.
Yeah, you could say it is a reorientation to reality.
Yeah.
You are small, the world is large, the world is not about you.
That is a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah.
So the speech shifts partway through chapter 38. It moves from the inanimate cosmos to living creatures. This is not a random change in topic, is it?
Not at all. The specific animal selection makes a structural argument.
We see deliberate sequence. The catalog begins with the lion hunting prey for her cubs. It moves to the raven. The raven's young cry to God for food, and God provides it.
Then we see the wild goat and the deer. They give birth in remote places. Humans do not observe them. Humans do not assist them in their calving.
Next is the wild donkey. The text explicitly states the donkey scorns the city. It ignores the shouts of a driver. It lives entirely free from human domestication. Its home is the salt land.
Then the text points to the wild ox. God asks Job if the wild ox will serve at a human crib.
Will it harrow the valleys behind Job? Humans cannot harness its massive strength.
We need to establish the pattern here clearly. Every animal in this sequence exists outside human control. None of them serve human utility.
Which is fascinating because Job was a wealthy man before his trials. He previously owned vast domesticated flocks. He had thousands of sheep, camels, and oxen.
He understood the economics of domesticated animals perfectly. He understood breeding, shearing, and plowing.
But these wild creatures are completely different. God cares for them, but he cares for them outside human moral categories. He cares for them outside human economic systems.
And then we get to the ostrich.
Oh, the ostrich. The ostrich receives a long, almost comic treatment here. She leaves her eggs on the ground. She warms them in the dust. She forgets that a foot might crush them. The wild beast might trample them.
The text explicitly says God deprived the ostrich of wisdom. He did not impart understanding to her. She treats her young harshly, as if they were not hers.
Yet the text also says when she lifts herself up on high, she scorns the horse and his rider. She outruns human cavalry.
It's such a strange image. Divine wisdom distributes itself strangely in this text. It defies tidy moral expectations.
The ostrich is foolish. She is careless with her own offspring. And yet she is physically superior to human military might.
And God claims authorship of this bizarre creature. He seems to actually delight in her absurdity.
He really does. And then the war horse passage follows. The horse leaps like a locust. Its snorting is terrible. It paws in the valley. It rejoices in its strength.
It goes out to meet the weapons. It laughs at fear. It swallows the ground with fierceness and rage.
I know Robert Alter praises this passage highly. He calls it the most successful nature poetry in the Hebrew Bible.
Yes, Alter points out that it captures raw physical vitality. It does this without moralizing it. The horse is not good or evil. It is simply magnificent and terrifying.
The catalog then closes with birds of prey. The hawk flies south by God's wisdom. The eagle mounts up at God's command. The eagle makes her nest on high. For there she seeks her prey.
And the text ends the chapter with a very stark image. Her young ones also suck up blood. Where the slain are, there is she.
This is unflinching predation. There's no moral commentary attached to the blood. It's just a fact of nature.
We need to synthesize this with William Brown's argument about the decentered universe. Job and his friends expected a human-centered moral universe. But God presents a temming natural order entirely indifferent to human accounting.
Right. Lions need to eat other animals. Eagles drink blood from corpses. None of this violence depends on Job's innocence or guilt.
Exactly. The ecosystem functions on a logic of provision that inherently includes predation.
The natural world is not governed by the strict retributive justice the Friends argued for. The Friends argued that suffering is always a punishment for sin.
But the antelope does not sin before the lion eats it. The lion is just hungry. God feeds the lion.
I have to challenge the Friends' theology here based on this. Does this expose their theology as a form of human arrogance? I mean, did they disguise human-centric pride as piety by forcing God to act only as a human referee?
I think that is precisely the implication of the animal catalog. The Friends believed they were defending God's honor. They spoke endlessly of God's perfect justice.
But in reality, they were defending a closed system.
Yes, a system that made human behavior the absolute center of cosmic gravity.
And the Whirlwind speech dismantles that system completely. It shows a God who delights in a wild, unharnessable world. This world pays absolutely no attention to human systems of merit.
Right. So Job speaks briefly at the beginning of chapter 40. The first speech has ended. Job says, "Behold, I am vile.
which is a strong word in English.
It is. A better translation from the Hebrew might be, I am of small account. He lays his hand upon his mouth.
So this is provisional silence. He recognizes he has nothing to add to the conversation about cosmology or zoology. It is not full capitulation yet.
No, he does not retract his claim of innocence here. He just stops arguing.
And then God speaks from the whirlwind a second time. The focus narrows dramatically in this second speech.
The sweeping catalog of weather and animals ends. Two specific creatures take center stage now.
We examine Behemoth first. It appears in chapter 40. It eats grass like an ox. It has strength in its loins. Its force is in the muscles of its belly. Its tail is like a cedar tree.
Its bones are bronze tubes. Its limbs are like iron bars.
The text calls Behemoth the chief of the ways of God. It says, he who made him can bring near his sword. Behemoth is made alongside humanity.
It fears no human effort to capture it. It lies under the lotus trees. The river Jordan swells, but Behemoth is not alarmed.
And scholars debate Behemoth's identity quite a bit, don't they?
They do. Many argue it is a hippopotamus. The description matches a large river creature fairly well. The text uses exaggerated mythic language to describe it, but the base might be a hippo.
But other scholars argue it is a primordial mythological land beast, right?
Yes, they argue it is meant to pair with the sea beast that follows. In later Jewish apocalyptic literature, Behemoth and Leviathan are often paired as the ultimate land and sea monsters.
Which brings us to Leviathan. Leviathan appears in chapter 41. This creature gets the longest sustained treatment in all the speeches.
It does, and the language terms unmistakably cosmic here. It is not a naturalistic animal description like the lion or the goat.
No, not at all. Leviathan breathes flame. Sparks of fire leap out of its mouth. Smoke goes out of its nostrils. Its heart is as hard as stone.
Weapons bounce off it harmlessly. The sword, the spear, and the javelin cannot pierce its scales. It makes the deep boil like a pot.
God calls Leviathan king over all the children of pride. God asks Job a series of taunting questions about it. Can you draw out Leviathan with a fishhook? Could you put a rope in his nose?
Will he make a covenant with you? Will you play with him as with a bird?
John Day establishes the ancient Near Eastern background for this imagery, right? He says this is Chaoskampf material.
Yes, Chaoskampf. It is a German academic term. It translates to struggle against chaos. It refers to a widespread mythological motif in the ancient world. A divine warrior fights a chaos monster, usually a sea serpent, to establish cosmic order.
You see this in Canaanite and Ugaritic myths. Baal fights Yam, the sea god. He fights Litan or Lotan, a twisting sea serpent. Leviathan corresponds directly to these figures. It is a chaos monster.
Exactly. In those surrounding cultures, the storm god must defeat the sea monster to maintain order. The battle is often close. The gods struggle.
But the book of Job subverts this motif, doesn't it? God does not battle Leviathan in a cosmic struggle for survival.
Not at all. God created Leviathan. God plays with Leviathan. God views Leviathan as a masterpiece of his creation.
This requires us to revisit the connection to the Satan from the prologue. We previously discussed Peggy Day's reading of the Satan. She views the Satan as a bounded prosecutor within the divine council.
And the text never explicitly links Leviathan and the Satan.
But readers infer the link through thematic resonance. Both figures represent dangerous, destructive forces.
Yes. Both represent chaos. And crucially, both exist entirely answerable to Yahweh's sovereignty. The Satan is allowed to test Job, but only within strict bounds set by God.
He can touch the property, but not the body. Then he can touch the body, but not the life.
Leviathan operates similarly. It is a terrifying creature. It boils the deep, but Yahweh made it. Yahweh controls it.
So the book makes a consistent theological claim through both figures. All chaos operates within limits, and only God fully controls those limits.
We must examine the rhetorical argument God makes here. God asks if Job can subdue Leviathan. Job obviously cannot. A human cannot hook a fire-breathing sea dragon.
Therefore, Job's claim that he could successfully argue against divine governance falls apart.
The logic is clear. If Job cannot govern the physical chaos monster, he lacks the capacity to govern the moral universe. He lacks the standing to condemn God's management of the cosmos.
But this raises a serious question about the persistence of chaos. If Leviathan is alive and well in God's creation, does that mean God deliberately sustains chaos rather than eliminating it? What does that mean for human safety?
It's a profound question. If God boasts about creating a fire-breathing sea monster, he is actively maintaining a dangerous world.
He seems to delight in its fearsome power. He spends an entire chapter bragging about its impenetrable scales.
That is the unsettling conclusion of the second speech. God does not eradicate chaos, he bounds it, he manages it. Human safety is not the primary metric by which God organizes the cosmos.
The world is intentionally wild. Chaos is a permitted resident within it.
You live in a world where Leviathan swims.
Wow. Okay, so Job gives his final response in chapter 42. It spans just 6 verses. It is remarkably brief. It stands in stark contrast to his lengthy, verbose defenses earlier in the book.
He has listened to nearly 4 chapters of divine interrogation.
He acknowledges God can do all things. He admits no purpose of God can be thwarted. He admits he uttered things he did not understand. He spoke of things too wonderful for him which he did not know.
He quotes God's own questions back to him. Who is this that hides counsel without knowledge? Job applies the rebuke to himself. He says he had heard of God by the hearing of the ear, but now his eye sees God.
Verse 6 contains a highly contested translation, though. It is the pivot upon which the entire conclusion turns. The meaning of this single verse dictates how we understand the resolution of the book.
It really does.
The King James Version reads, "Wherefore I abhor myself and repent in dust and ashes." This suggests full capitulation. It implies Job admits guilt. It implies he admits prideful overreach.
Which aligns with the traditional Orthodox reading. In this reading, Job is humbled. He apologizes for his tone. He realizes he was wrong to question God.
But the underlying Hebrew is genuinely difficult. Modern translations handle it differently. The New American Standard Bible reads, "Therefore I retract and I repent in dust and ashes."
The verb traditionally translated as abhor myself is maz. It can mean retract or recant. It can mean to reject or despise a thing, not necessarily oneself.
So Job is withdrawing his legal claim. He is dropping the lawsuit. He is not expressing self-loathing.
And the root for repent is nasham. It can mean to be sorry or to change one's mind. It is the same root used when God relents from sending destruction upon a city. It does not necessarily mean repenting from moral sin.
Carol Newsom offers another layer to this interpretation. She notes that some scholars read Nachum in this context as being comforted.
Right, the verse could be translated as Job being comforted concerning dust and ashes.
This writing changes everything. It's about finding peace in his mortal state. Dust and ashes represent his mortality and his mourning. He's sitting in an ash heap. He is accepting his smallness.
If he is comforted concerning dust and ashes, he is not offering a doctrinal repentance for sin. He maintained his innocence throughout the book. He still maintains it.
He is simply accepting his place in the cosmos. He has encountered the divine presence, and that presence is enough.
Yes, the prose epilogue follows immediately. We return to the narrative style of the prologue. God speaks to Eliphaz the Temanite.
God's wrath is kindled against Eliphaz and his 2 friends.
God says they have not spoken of him what is right. God says Job has spoken what is right.
This is a startling verdict. The friends defended pious orthodoxy. They defended the rules. They said God always rewards the good and punishes the wicked. Job accused God of injustice. Job called God a tyrant.
Yet God endorses Job's speech.
David Kleins explores this paradox, doesn't he?
Yes, Kleins argues the friends' error was mechanical theology. They applied abstract systems to accuse an innocent man. They valued their theological framework over the reality of human suffering.
They lied about the world to protect their idea of God.
Job told the truth about his experience. He wrestled directly and personally with God. He brought his anger and his wounds directly to the source.
Honest confrontation is preferable to safe, comfortable theological distance. God prefers Job's angry truth to the friends' polite lies.
And then God requires Job to pray for the friends. God tells the friends to offer a burnt offering, but God says he will only accept Job's prayer on their behalf.
The accused intercedes for the accusers. The reversal of fortunes begins here, in the act of intercession.
The Lord restores Job's fortunes. The text says God gave Job twice as much as he had before. All his brothers and sisters come to eat bread with him.
They console him for all the evil the Lord had brought upon him. They each give him a piece of money and a gold ring.
God doubles the livestock. We get exact numbers. He receives 14,000 sheep. He receives 6,000 camels. He gets 1,000 yoke of oxen and 1,000 female donkeys.
Job receives 7 sons and 3 daughters again. The livestock is doubled. The children are not. He lost 10 children in the prologue. He gets 10 children in the epilogue.
Lost children cannot simply be replaced like property.
The daughters are named individually in the text. This is highly unusual. The sons are not named. The daughters are Jemima, Keziah, and Karen Hapuch.
Jemima means dove. Keziah means cassia or cinnamon. Karen Hapuch means horn of eye paint. These names evoke beauty and fragrance.
The text notes, "There were no women so beautiful in all the land." And then it provides a startling detail. Job gives them an inheritance among their brothers.
This defies standard ancient practice. In ancient Near Eastern law, daughters typically only inherited if there were no sons.
Job's inclusion of his daughters in the inheritance stands out sharply. It reflects a man changed by his experience. He ignores patriarchal norms to secure the future of his daughters.
Job lives 140 years after this. He sees his sons and his sons' sons for 4 generations. He dies old and full of days.
We must name the scholarly discomfort with this ending. Does this epilogue undo the whole book? The poetry spent 39 chapters dismantling the idea of retributive justice.
And then the epilogue seems to just reassert retributive blessing. Job suffers, learns a lesson, and gets rich again.
Some scholars argue it is simply necessary narrative closure for an ancient folktale. The audience expects a restoration. You cannot end a folk narrative with a man still sitting in ashes.
Right, it's a structural requirement of the genre.
But I wonder if the epilogue is secretly tragic. We read about the exact numbers of the livestock doubling. We read about the new herds of camels. Does a fresh herd of camels actually fix the loss of the first 10 children?
The text is entirely silent on Job's ongoing grief.
The children are just...
God asks Job where he was when the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy.
Traditional Christian readings see generic angels here. They view the divine council as created heavenly beings witnessing the earth's formation.
But Latter-day Saints hear an echo of premortal existence. We read this alongside texts like Abraham chapter 3.
We believe we were spirit sons and daughters. We existed before the world was created. We participated in a premortal council. We witnessed the plan of salvation presented.
We must connect this theological premise directly to God's argument to Job. God tells Job he was not present at physical creation. God argues Job lacks the standing to evaluate the cosmos because he was not there when the foundations were laid.
Restoration theology complicates this argument. We believe we were present in some form. We were the sons and daughters of God. We shouted for joy at the plan.
Yet we chose mortality. We passed through a veil of forgetfulness. We forgot the details of that counsel. We forgot the vastness of the plan.
This identifies a specific kind of humility required of us. It is not the humility of simple ignorance. It is the humility of forgotten assent. We shouted for joy at a plan we cannot fully recall.
We understood the necessity of opposition. We understood the necessity of suffering in the abstract. But we do not comprehend how that plan plays out in the granular pain of mortal life.
Abstract theological consent does not numb the reality of physical and emotional agony.
Premortal presence does not collapse the gap between human and divine understanding. It makes the gap more poignant. We agreed to a system knowing we would experience blindness within it.
You agreed to experience the very limits Job rails against.
Job never gets his explanation. God never mentions the Satan. God never explains the wager. Job gets a reminder of scale.
He is relocated inside something much larger than his own legal case. He encounters the presence of God in the storm.
We can connect this directly to Jesus Christ. Christ descended below all things. He entered the ultimate suffering. He experienced the dark without the immediate answer.
On the cross, he cried out, my God, why hast thou forsaken me?"
Christ experienced the full weight of the mortal veil. He experienced the withdrawal of divine explanation in the moment of supreme agony.
This is the heart of trust. Trust is not having all the answers. Trust is standing inside a relationship with God. We accept. He does not owe us an explanation for every trial.
We do not read the absence of explanation as an absence of care. The Whirlwind speech does not provide a theological equation to solve the problem of pain. It provides a voice. It provides presence. God shows up.
If the voice from the Whirlwind speaks to you today, perhaps it isn't asking you to understand the storm. You will not map the limits of Leviathan. You will not understand why the rain falls in the desolate wilderness. Perhaps the voice is asking you to recognize who rides within the storm. It asks you to trust that your small, ash-covered life is known by the God who feeds the ravens and commands the morning. We will see you next time.